The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. Sam, are you ready to preview the first round of the playoffs for the Phoenix Suns?
Hell yeah, I am. Back. Here we are, 48 hours after the last episode, back again on the main feed. Episode 301 on the main feed today because, yes, we did not realize that our last episode was actually our 300th of all time. So we've been at this for a while. This is the start of playoff run number 3 for us. And it's gone a lot of different ways, but I'm ready.
300 episodes, pretty crazy.
300 episodes, basically 5 years. We've been doing it for a while, man. We're not the new kids on the block anymore, believe it or not.
It's still, I still feel that way in my mind. Maybe that'll never go away. But yeah, the Suns are in the playoffs. They play the Los Angeles Clippers, and we're going to talk about that today. And I think, you know, they've done it before 2 years ago. And weirdly, the Clippers team, not all that different. The Suns team, pretty dramatically different. And I think it'll be an interesting series to preview. And I think the way we're going to do it is we both wrote down some of the biggest questions we could think of that could have an impact on the series. And we're going to go through each of those questions back and forth. Are there any initial thoughts?
Just the two of us, by the way, no guest for today. We did call.
Yeah, that's right.
We did call Patrick Beverly and asked if he had some room to talk about these two teams that he's shown so much interest in the past. He was not available. But yeah, we'll go back and forth with some questions. Should be good.
All right. Any initial thoughts before we get to our questions?
Initial thoughts. I feel good. This was the matchup that we wanted, certainly more than the Warriors, and even more, I think, than the Lakers too. I would say maybe the Pelicans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Pelicans would have been like out of the 4 that were competing right up until the end for that 5th seed. Maybe the Pelicans would have been the ideal matchup. But I feel pretty good about playing the Clippers. We don't know the exact status of Paul George. I imagine he's going to miss the whole series, or at least a good amount of the series, but we just don't know. So yeah, we'll operate based on what we know, but I still think there's a lot of good strategy to talk about here. I still think they can give us a hell of a series. I'm not going to throw out an exact prediction number of games, at least not at this point in the pod, but we kind of have to hash it out, but I feel good.
Yeah, for those who are waiting for any sort of prediction from us, just in general, we don't really do that. We try to focus mostly on basketball. I will say, since all of my questions are basketball related, from a narrative perspective, before we jump into those, we have obviously Chris Paul versus the Clippers again. Maybe less impactful after he eliminated the Clippers 2 years ago. The other one, I think a storyline that's sort of gone almost under the radar a little bit, or maybe people just don't care as much because it's not OKC, is the first time Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant will play each other in the NBA playoffs. I thought that was kind of an interesting one. Any other like narrative storylines stand out to you for this one?
No, that's basically it, man. It's Russ versus KD. It's Kawhi versus KD. They have a very long history.
That's the other one,
in the playoffs.
Yeah. In the finals, but only one game.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, honestly, these teams, I sense more animosity between the fan bases than I do between the teams for once. There are potential matchups that the Suns could have had where I think they actually hate that opposing team, or at least players on our team hate that team. I don't sense that with the Clippers. I sense mostly mutual respect, especially when you talk about like the coaching staffs, Monty Williams, Ty Lue, on the two respective sides. I don't know. I think we're going to have, this is one of my points, actually. It's not one of my questions, so I guess I can just say it now, but I'd like to think we'll have a fairly clean, ethical series in a lot of ways, but maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time just sort of watching a lot of the coverage and listening to some of the coverage this morning, and it was interesting to hear how it's being covered nationally. A lot of it is like, oh, isn't it weird that Kevin Durant's on the Phoenix Suns? That's like how they're all saying it, which, to be fair, it is kind of weird. I'm still not totally used to it. It would have been different if he played every game after the trade deadline, but being that we only have 8 or 9 or whatever it ended up being, doesn't feel like much. And I think it makes this particular playoffs hard to really cover, and I think to really figure out statistically how they match up. I guess a better way to put it is, if you're a gambler, don't gamble on this.
Don't gamble on this.
Not
one?
Enough information.
I don't know. I mean, if you're confident in your abilities, man, maybe there's some value that you could grab out of that other gamblers couldn't. I think what's interesting about that, there's the talking point of the Suns they're 8-0 with KD, yes, but they haven't had a lot of time to coalesce. Maybe they will need more time in the playoffs to really get going. I do think people often forget the other side of that equation, which is that, yes, these guys have not played a lot of minutes together, but on the other side of things, the Clippers, they can't scout. There is no film that they can really watch on this particular combination of Suns players in order for them to better prepare to take on this team. And that's the part that I think people don't really talk about enough, is these two teams played each other 2 years ago. I think it was Kellen Olson had a really good 2-part breakdown preview of this series, and he was the one that mentioned in that series 2 years ago, the top minute getters for the Los Angeles Clippers in order were Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Marcus Morris. Paul George is injured, Reggie Jackson's off the team, and Marcus Morris currently has COVID, but even if he comes back, lost his starting spot to Nick Batum and generally seems to be playing less of a role on this current iteration of the Clippers team. These are completely different teams, both of them, from who they were 2 years ago. And even if you look at their 4 matchups this year, because they're in the same division, they play 4 times a year, well, none of that matters either. Because none of those games were these exact combinations of players, these lineups that we're about to see. So it's all speculation.
It could have happened.
It's all speculation at this point. There are things that you can isolate watching film, right? You can isolate certain plays, certain set designs, like specific players. But beyond that, we're all just, it's a lot of guesswork on both sides. And that's part of the fun of it, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can make the case that the entire Western Conference playoffs is the hardest it's been to predict since I can remember. Like a lot of the top odds for the title don't even come from the top 3 teams, for example, in the West. It's the Warriors and the Suns. The Suns have the best odds to win the title in the West so far, and they're the 4 seed. So the top 3 seeds don't even have that, and then the next one is the 6 seed in the Warriors, and then you get the Nuggets at that point. But yeah, it's really difficult to predict in a good way, in a way that I think could lead to a lot of really fun basketball. Maybe the Suns are probably the most favored of any team in the first round against their first round opponent, as far as the teams that are settled, because as of right now, we don't know who's playing the Nuggets in the first round. The Nuggets could probably be favored against. Well,
you're talking about the West, just to be clear, right?
In the West, the West. I think the West is the one that's hard to predict.
Yeah, I think the East is different. Just important.
The East is pretty normal for what basketball usually is, which is like a couple really good teams at the top, and then the rest of the teams trying to scrap. I think the West is just not really normal in that same way. We have a couple teams at the top that are good but not great, and then a bunch of teams that had injuries towards the bottom that could be great, and they're still kind of good. And that's what makes it really hard to predict and could be really fun. That play-in game was an example of what it could potentially... It almost feels like March Madness, where it's like, yeah, these teams are good, but it's not this great basketball and anyone could win. And that's kind of what it felt like during the play-in game. I think there's one huge question that we just got to get out of the way to start. And I'll just say it. It's, will Paul George play? That's like the biggest question mark in this series, right?
Yeah. Basically all of the other research I did and everything that I'm about to talk about in the next 45 minutes or hour, however long this goes, it all goes out the window if Paul George plays, because I was just assumed he wasn't going to play, and they become a much stronger team, a much more formidable foe if Paul George plays, because they would have 2 legitimate stars, and right now they just don't. When it's just Kawhi, their offense looks a lot more, just a lot weaker, a lot more vulnerable.
Paul George has a knee injury. The timeline for the knee injury that they initially said was 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks is up, I believe, today as we record this, which we're recording on Wednesday for those listening. And he was seen recently in a massive knee brace. There is a Clippers warm-up or practice going on right now as we speak, and there was a photo of him attempting to shoot a basketball without a knee brace on as we record this. Now, whether or not Paul George plays is a two-parter question. Will he play to start the series? Will he play at all towards the end of the series, for example? And then I guess another part to that is, if he does play, what will he look like? Because I don't think he'll be fully healthy regardless. It's a knee injury. Those are dangerous to play with. And for the Clippers, what is this, year 4 or 5 of this team with these two guys together?
Of the two of them, it's at least year 4.
Yeah. And, they probably want to get some games in with both of them playing. And, yeah, like you said, so much of it changes. There seems to be some level of assumption in a lot of the media coverage nationally that he's not going to play at all for the first round. I'm going to just say I doubt that he doesn't play at all. I think there's a chance, for example, if their backs are against the wall, that he starts to play in an elimination game or something like that. Maybe he doesn't start the series playing, but I would doubt that he doesn't play at all in this series. And like you said, I think it does change dramatically if he does end up playing.
Yeah,
any other thoughts on that?
Just all the more reason it was great that the Suns locked up the 4 seed, got home court advantage, so that if you don't necessarily come out of the gate the strongest, which we hope they do, but if you don't, you maybe give yourself more breathing room towards the back end of a series where Paul George could potentially return. That's, I guess, the only other thing to say.
Well, interestingly, the Clippers were the team that rested the most throughout the season, too. They probably could have secured home court advantage had they not rested. But I mean, the question always remains: would Kawhi Leonard be healthy right now if they did? If they didn't rest him, that kind of thing. So it's just a give and a take with that kind of thing. All right, let's get into the rest of the questions we have, because I think that was a big one. But the rest of them, I think we sort of are assuming, at least at some level, that he's not going to play to start. We plan on recording after every game, so we will adjust expectations as we understand how things change, whether or not he's going to play, how he looks, how everyone looks, that kind of thing. But for now, let's just get into our questions. I think I'll let you start here with what one of your biggest questions is.
Yep. So starting at number 1 for me, we covered that Paul George will not be in this series, at least to start. So that leaves the obvious question: what the hell is the Clippers' rotation going to be in this series? And that's kind of a big question. You can attack it from many angles. I guess where we start is we all know Kawhi Leonard's the man on this team. He's the one star. He's been playing, like I posted a few days ago, but his season stats, if you just look at the season stats, are quite deceiving. He's had a hell of a run post All-Star break, averaging 27 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists per game on 66% true shooting. That is phenomenal. He has been a true number 1 superstar for this stretch run. But around him, it becomes a little bit interesting, because I think the Clippers generally have this reputation, even without Paul George, as having a lot of valuable depth and a lot of pieces who are plug and play, potentially allowing them to go small sometimes, potentially allowing them to go big other times. They've got a glut of wings, and I mean an absolute glut of wings. And just to reflect that, even without Paul George, I have written down here 11 players who I sincerely believe could play a big role for the Clippers in this rotation. And however, we know that they are not going to play. They're not going to roll with an 11-man rotation every night. In fact, the average playoff team ideally is looking to trim things down to maybe an 8 or 9-man rotation. So I can list out those players if you want. I'm sure you could also guess them, but mostly just to reflect the fact that I think Ty Lue really has his work cut out for him in this series. With Paul George not playing, I think there's a certain level of production that will be expected of Kawhi every night. Other guys, obviously, some guys you want to step up like Russell Westbrook, but other guys, it's really the guys on the margins. They can find enough talent on the margins, I think, to win games, but it's going to be about choosing the right guys every night, and that's going to be a particularly difficult challenge for Ty Lue, I think, because there's a lot of different directions he could go. Just to kind of throw out some names, the guys who are on the margins who either could play or could not, Eric Gordon is starting right now. Nick Batum is starting right now. They could start. They could play really important roles, but they could have their minutes slashed. We're waiting on Marcus Morris to come back. Norm Powell, I think, is definitely going to play a big role because he's such a flamethrower, but to what extent will he play a big role remains to be seen. And then you've got the guys like, is Robert Covington going to play? He's been in and out of the rotation. Yeah. Is Bones Highland going to play? They kind of don't have another backup guard besides him, but he's also young and just you don't know what you're going to get out of him on any given night. Is Terrence Mann going to play? Because he's played I think he's played in 81 games this season, but is also just kind of on the margins of, do you trust him in a playoff series like you trust maybe Nick Batum or Marcus Morris or I don't know, other guys. So who the hell is going to play for the Clippers? I couldn't tell you exactly who's going to play every night at this point.
Right. And even beyond that, Mason Plumlee, like, do they play bigs? That all of those questions are, which I have more to add to later. But let's start with this. The most used lineup since the Paul George injury was Russell Westbrook, Eric Gordon, Kawhi Leonard, Nick Batum, and Zubac at that point. So that's like their starters. Essentially, this is what we can expect them to start with, assuming Paul George is not playing. Russ, Gordon, Leonard, Batum, Zubac, just once again. And the numbers for that lineup are really great. They have like really great net rating, but all of that came in like the last 2.5-3 weeks of the season. Not a lot of teams trying at that point, especially compared to them who were just trying to stay out of the play-in race. They were just sort of desperately clawing to stay in it and didn't win a ton of games. They were sort of around 500 in that time period. I think with this lineup starting, they were something like 7-3. I don't have that in front of me. But that's the main lineup there. And I think if they start with that, then you ask who comes off the bench. But I do like the way you worded it. I think the assumption by a lot of people is the Clippers have this really great bench. And I guess my question is, do they?
I think
I'm not really sure. Do they?
I think they do. But
who are we talking? Who's their best bench player?
Norm Powell.
Norm Powell. Okay,
that's a great guy. There. That's a great guy to have as a sixth man.
Potential sixth man of the year candidate. Yeah,
he can score 20 points, not every game, but he can go out and play 30 minutes and score 20 points sometimes, and he does it on a variety of different looks because he can hit threes, but he also gets to the free throw line for them, which is really, really important. Okay. In fact, he has a better free throw contact rate this season, or free throw rate, than either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. I think that's important for them in terms of how they approach their offense this series.
Right. And partially because he doesn't pass.
He's the only guy on their bench, though, who I'm 100% confident right now is going to like play a big role every night. Every other guy is talented.
Right. Beyond that, who is it? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think
that's a question, and that's what I think is interesting about this assumption of depth.
I think Marcus Morris is still pretty good. I think he has lost a step or two. But I don't know that they need him every night. I think Mason Plumlee is good, but I don't know if they need him every night because they might want to go small. And again, I think Bones Bones can drop 20 on you too, by the way.
Bones is the only guy that could potentially lose them multiple playoff games and win them one.
Yeah,
that's absolutely. Like a guy who could win them a game.
So
but beyond that, I'm not sure. Like, you got Luke Kennard. Can he play? Yeah. Is he a good defender? No, not really. I mean, if you absolutely need shooting, then he's out there, but then the Suns are going to target him every possession he's out there. I think there's a chance that even if Terrence Mann is shooting, significantly worse from the three-point line, I think there's just a chance that Terrence Mann takes those minutes because you can trust him more on switches and to defend, and if that means Terrence Mann's out there, he's a fine player. I think the idea of depth makes a lot more sense when Paul George plays, admittedly. Eric Gordon's now on the bench, and Eric Gordon, along with Norm Powell, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch coming off the bench. But I'm just not as impressed by the bench as I think a lot of people tend to be. I'm not sure how many of these guys are going to play a massive role on the team. A lot of the idea of the Clippers' depth, started with thinking John Wall was going to be good at the beginning of the season. There was a lot of assumptions made about this team that ended up not necessarily being true. The other person that's not played very well is Robert Covington. He's just not, He's not what people thought he was years ago.
He's not what they need him to be. By the way, just for the quick correction, because if I don't do it, I know someone will mention it. Luke Kennard is on the Grizzlies now. But
that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, but I agree with you in the essence of the conversation, which is that I do think they have a lot of players here who are like solid 3-and-D role players in a vacuum. Does it necessarily coalesce together in the best way? In a series against the Phoenix Suns, I'm not so sure. Just going back to the question of Bones Highland. So if Bones is losing you games because he's turning the ball over and taking inefficient shots, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but it could. What's your pivot? You don't have another. Your guards are Russell Westbrook and him.
This is one of my questions, and I'll just fold it right into this conversation. I just wanted to list out the playmakers, the people who are capable of dribbling and making plays for themselves and others on each team. So let's start with the Suns. We got Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Cam Payne. Those are the main 4 guys that can make plays on the team. Assuming Paul George is out, let's start naming them specifically for the Clippers. We got Kawhi Leonard. We got Russell Westbrook, who is a turnover machine. Then who?
Who can dribble? Powell can dribble.
Who can play? Who can make plays for themselves and for others? We got Powell, who averages 1.5 assists. Maybe?
Powell. Well, that's what I was going to say. He can make plays for himself. That's half of it. He can't make plays for others.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have that. It's
Marcus Morris,
but then
can make. He can score an ISO. Gordon can
occasionally.
Yeah.
I think the concept of depth in the playoffs is important. And I think a lot of people assume the best thing to have when it comes to depth in the playoffs is 3-and-D players. 3-and-D players matter a lot, and actually they matter a lot on teams that have superstars. Take one of the superstars away, if those 3-and-D players can't dribble, they can't create, they can't do anything besides stand behind the three-point line and take shots offensively, it becomes a lot harder to do things. Dribbling and playmaking in the playoffs, as we've talked about, as it pertains to the Suns, matters more and more and more as you get deeper and deeper into the playoffs. And the fact that I think the Clippers are going into this with essentially 2 players that you can trust, and one of them is Russell Westbrook. It's just a tough situation for them.
Yeah. It flows really nicely into another one of my questions, but I do think it's your turn, so I think I should let you go first.
Well, let's go right into defense then. Who guards Devin Booker? Because this is the other huge, I think, a massive question that's related to their lineups. Because let's start with the starting lineup, assuming they keep the starting lineup who they have here, which is Russ, Gordon, Leonard, Batum, Zubac. Let's just say, which I'm not even sure of, let's just say Kawhi Leonard guards Kevin Durant. Right? Is that an assumption that we're willing to make at this point? Kawhi Leonard, not quite the Kawhi Leonard defensively that everyone thinks he was.
I think
he hasn't been that at all.
I think they could do it. However, I want to point out one of my favorite guys for Clippers coverage, and he doesn't just do Clippers coverage, he does around the league coverage, but Shane Young on Twitter, I think it's Young NBA. I encourage people to go follow him, and I just want to quickly say I hesitate at this point, having been burned in the past with... Sometimes you recommend, like at the start of a playoff series, you say, oh, go follow these people. They cover the team. They do a great job. And then it turns into like a toxic shit fest of 2 fan bases just slinging shit at each other like chimpanzees, right? Shane is not going to do that. He approaches and I think there are people who cover the Clippers who would do that. Shane is not one of them. He approaches all of the basketball analysis in a great way. All of this to say that I was listening to him speak about it, and he thinks that there is still a very good chance that Batum starts on KD, not Kawhi Leonard. If you want to talk about...
And in that assumption, we're saying Kawhi Leonard guards Devin Booker.
But he didn't put those words out there because they didn't touch on it.
It's an interesting question.
But I think that's possible. I also think it's possible that Eric Gordon just guards Devin Booker.
I think there's a good chance that it's Eric Gordon.
But I think, to your point, there's not a clear answer right now, and maybe that bodes well for the Suns. Certainly, we know it would have been Paul George were Paul George playing. And again,
right,
the fact
and
that Paul George isn't
Paul
there,
George at some point in the series, right? It could be still him, and maybe potentially a hobbled Paul George at some point in this series. And I don't think the last time the Clippers played the Suns, they had Patrick Beverley. And Patrick Beverley broke Devin Booker's nose, and that was the best possible scenario for anyone guarding Devin Booker on that team. that was a team where Devin Booker was the only real superstar. I don't see a scenario where they could build a lineup where they have players who could potentially cover both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. This is a problem for most teams in the league. I would say the teams that probably have the best options to do that are in the East. I just don't see how you do it. I just don't see how you do it. I mean, the best case scenario, I think, is Leonard guards. I guess Leonard guards Durant, and maybe you put some combination of Batum or Gordon on Devin Booker. But Booker's gonna kill either one of those guys. I think if they try to guard him, especially around screens.
He's got such a size advantage on Gordon. Not in terms of thickness. Gordon is a thick dude, but he's got height on him, and
he can just raise up over him. Yeah,
he can rise up over him, and he's got an athletic advantage too in terms of first step, quickness, all that. Eric Gordon's like 36, and then he's got a quickness advantage versus Batum as well. So it's just difficult. But then the other problem is, so you could put Batum on Durant instead. Durant will kill Batum in single coverage. He just will.
Yeah.
What I think. Yeah. So I'm just gonna relay or parlay this into one of my questions, which is how are they going to approach the Kevin Durant matchup, the Clippers, so that we can kind of talk about both of them at once. I think one thing they could do is they could put Batum on KD, and they could basically do what we've been wondering if a team is going to do, which is guard Josh Okogie with nobody, and put Zubats on, quote unquote, on Josh Okogie, but really just have him roaming at the rim so that he can kind of maybe box out against DeAndre Ayton, because otherwise Ayton will feast on the glass. But mostly it's just going to mean that you can double coverage KD or Booker, or kind of try and zone it up to whatever spot they're at on the floor, and Okogie's just going to have a shit ton of space, and he'll have to take 10 threes per game. That seems to me like an obvious adjustment that maybe they even start the series that way, or maybe they go to that at some point. Because they need an extra body on, if not Durant or Booker or both of them, then they just need to figure that out. And how they figure it out one-on-one with the 5 guys that we know are probably going to be starting, I just think it's going to be too difficult.
Yeah, I don't really know what they're going to do there. I think that's probably one of the more interesting questions on how they guard Josh Okogie, and I think the Suns can do some interesting things with Russell Westbrook on the other side of that, which we can talk about. Actually, I'll just say it now. Like, with the Suns and Russ, if you're just daring Russ to shoot, by the way, who shot like 35 or 36%, I think, from 3, well, on the Clippers, I don't believe in it in any way, and I think the more shots you take, the less likely they're going in. Like, the Suns could just put Durant, for example, on Russell Westbrook and just let Durant be the guy helping everywhere and letting Russ just shoot from the perimeter and, that kind of thing. And I think even if they start to just really shade off of somebody like Okogie, that's when you get guys like Terrence Ross in there and you try to see what they can do.
And I do think, I want to give Okogie some credit. First of all, he's shooting, I think, like 34% on wide open threes or catch and shoot threes this season, which is not great, but I think it's just good enough that if he's taking 8 or 9 of those a game, I think you'll be fine. But if he's having games like 1 for 8, 0 for 8, like he did in that one Dallas game, you might have to pull him. On the other hand, he can help you win the possession battle back, because he's still enormous on the offensive glass. He's so good as an offensive rebounder. And I like, if you give Okogie that much space, he's going to take every inch you give him. He's not just going to shoot every time. He will drive the ball. He will drive the ball with an intention to dunk it on your head, and in doing so will get to the free throw line, or he's a decent passer for his position as well. So I don't think it's just as simple as Josh Okogie's not a great shooter, let's leave him open the entire series and we'll be fine, because I think Josh Okogie is smarter than that. And we've also seen the ways that the Suns can sometimes come and use Okogie as a screener and how that can open up their offense as well. So, I think that adjustment might come where Ty Lue says, okay, let's just make the 5th man beat us. But I think that would be an early series thing to happen rather than a late series thing, to which the Suns could make the next chess move from there. There's definitely disaster potential where Okogie gets played off the floor if he just can't hit his threes at all. But to be honest, with the season he's had, I have more confidence in him than that.
Well, another thing they like to do is, if they put Josh Okogie at, say, the top of the key and post up Kevin Durant in the corner with Chris Paul being the one feeding, Kevin Durant, what they're essentially doing is they're daring Chris Paul's man to double Durant, which means Josh Okogie's man is going to come off to guard Chris Paul on the catch, which gives Josh Okogie the straight line cut to the basket. So Okogie and his cutting, if they plan on not guarding him, is also going to be really important. And I think Durant has done a particularly good job finding guys on the cut, specifically in the post if they try to double that, which I think, maybe they won't do if it's Leonard guarding Durant. But, the other thing the Suns do is they do a really good job of forcing teams to switch when they're not trying to switch. So even if they start the possession with Leonard on Durant, there's a good chance that Chris Paul is going to make him switch, whoever's going to be on Chris Paul onto Durant. So they have to double. And then I think that's the chance where you can get Okogie to try and cut a few possessions to at least put that pressure on them long enough until somebody else gets in, say Kawhi Leonard comes out, and goes from there. What do you got? What's your next one?
Well, I had the how will they guard KD, so I think it's actually your turn again because we burned through one.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think on the other side of that, I think the easy question is who guards Kawhi?
Yeah.
For the Suns.
It's same issue, just flip it around.
Yeah, and I think the Suns in particular have the different type of problem where in some sense, if Okogie starts, now we're assuming Okogie is going to start, which I think at the very least, I think Okogie is going to start the first game of the series. I don't think the Suns are going to go away from something that's been working. They haven't lost a game yet with the starting lineup, so might as well give it a try. It's a really small power forward, essentially, which is a position he kind of plays. I mean, I guess you could say he's a small forward as well, but it's a small forward to play with Josh Okogie, and that means Okogie's matched up on Kawhi. Okogie is going to bother him every time he tries to dribble, but if Kawhi can get into that power game and really force him down into the paint, I think you can see him just sort of essentially pushing off and getting some open shots. That means the Suns, if they continue to leave somebody like Josh Okogie on Kawhi, the help defense and the rotations to shooters is going to be really important. But the other option is, they switch to Torrey Craig or Ish Wainwright to guard Kawhi. We saw Ish Wainwright guard him pretty well. But yeah, the other option, I think you can say, I'll let you have a chance to talk about that one.
It's Devin Booker. I don't know. I mean, this is a weird Devin Booker series because if Paul George were playing, everything just fits nicely into place. You've got, here's the narrative of Kawhi versus KD. Here's the narrative of Chris Paul versus Westbrook. And then there would be the narrative of Devin Booker versus Paul George. Without Paul George, I mean, this is great for the Suns because that all kind of falls apart. But so then what is Devin Booker's job this series exactly? We don't know who's going to be guarding him, and we don't know who he's going to be guarding. I think it's kind of whatever we decide to make of it. It's whatever role we invent for him. I definitely think he's up to that challenge at this point in his career because Kawhi's difficult, man. Okogie's small, and I just think Kawhi would get a little, and like he doesn't make a lot of mistakes in terms of turning the ball over. I almost think Okogie would be better on Westbrook. I don't know exactly. I haven't really thought this all through in my head of exactly where you would hide Chris Paul then, but I feel like Okogie really helps you win the possession battle by staying on the perimeter, forcing turnovers. But I do think Kawhi in kind of an ISO mid-range situation, it's not the ideal matchup for Okogie. He can kind of just rise up over him, and I don't think he can do that as easily against Devin Booker, who has a little bit more strength to him. So, but I don't know.
I mean, you didn't even say it. It could be KD too.
Yes, that's the other obvious one. It could absolutely be KD. Well, here's the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, this is a series where so instantly all of these one-on-one breakdown conversations are just they can't exist because both teams are going to be so much smarter than that. I implore the Suns to be smarter than just kind of sticking to their typical conservative drop defense where everyone guards like one person and that's whatever. This is a series where, well, actually, maybe I should save it because this hits on another one of my questions as well. We're just
we can save it.
The transitions are too seamless in this episode, but I don't know who's going to guard Devin Booker or Kawhi Leonard. Could be Devin Booker, could be Okogie.
Yeah, I'd like them to start with Okogie just to see. And I think what's nice about this is that they have a lot of guys you can throw at him. Like you say, you start with Okogie for a few possessions, you switch Devin Booker onto him for a few possessions, you switch KD onto him for a few possessions, then the bench comes in. Now you got Torrey Craig just bodying him up for a few possessions. And that for Kawhi Leonard, when he's the only star out there, which could just be one game, could be the entire series, then you want to make him as uncomfortable as possible, not knowing what's coming. You know, maybe you double, maybe you don't. Maybe you try to force the ball out of his hands as much as possible, let other guys try to create. Mm-hmm. You know, there's just a lot of ways that you can guard one-star teams, as we've seen with Devin Booker when it was a one-star team with him on the team. You have a lot of options to throw at them. And Kawhi, as good as anyone, just sort of imposing his will and still scoring. But if you can force the ball out of his hands at all, you know, and maybe you don't. Maybe you just say, okay, Okogie, do as best as you can, and we're just not going to let them get any threes, because that's another question that I have going forward. But, you know, it's Kawhi Leonard, and as much as he hasn't been Kawhi Leonard of the past in a while, in the last few months he kind of has been, and it'll be interesting to see how that translates to the playoffs.
Yeah, you're hitting exactly on it, so I'm just going to segue into my next question because it covers exactly this, which is, can the Suns throw the first punch defensively? What I mean by that is I want the Suns to be more aggressive, specifically on Kawhi Leonard, because they are in a unique position that they have not been in throughout this season. The Suns throughout the season, first of all, to give them credit with their conservative drop defense or whatever that I was just trashing a second ago, it's a top 10 defense in the NBA. There's not necessarily a reason to go into the playoffs and change it. But I think conversely, on the other side of the ball, we've seen what other teams have done to the Suns when we only had Devin Booker healthy. We've seen the traps. We've seen the doubles. We've seen how it can throw our offense out of rhythm. And rarely have we had the opportunity to do it back to another team. This is the series to do it. We have rarely gotten this opportunity, but finally here we are with two star players and they have one. Anytime Kawhi Leonard's around a pick and roll, at least, well, not every time because then it becomes predictable, but I would be playing DA much higher up. I think this is the series where you have maybe a little bit more wiggle room to try some hedging, try some trapping, see what works, what doesn't, because you're kind of experimenting for maybe the later rounds of the playoffs as well. And when you talk about Kawhi, a guy who is so gifted as a one-on-one scorer, but is not particularly a playmaker. Even in this awesome run that he's had post All-Star break, he's only averaging 4 assists per game. And if he's in the position where suddenly he's facing doubles, he's facing traps, and the only other bailout options he has on offense are to pitch the ball to Russell Westbrook, who might be wide open from 3 and might be taking that shot every time, or maybe to Norm Powell, who's going to take that shot every time and isn't a playmaker, it becomes pretty difficult to see possession to possession exactly how the Clippers are going to have a coherent offense. So in the past, I think Monty has hesitated this defensive strategy. I think trapping, hedging, is hard hedging at least, is like the thing we've seen the Suns do least this year. They're much more likely to drop or switch. But I think this is the series to go for it. Like, at least until Paul George is back. If Paul George is back, this doesn't make any sense. But take Kawhi's space away, make him as uncomfortable as possible, turn him into a playmaker. I would just go for it. I don't know how you feel about that, but
it's interesting because this is related to one of my questions, and I'll fold it into this as well since it's related. But let's start with what you said about this is the series to do it, because some people might be saying it should have been done against Luka. The thing about Luka, and this is what makes him different than Kawhi, to your point, is that you trap Luka on the left wing, he can make that pass himself to the right corner, for example, across the court, over 3 defenders, to right on the money to a shooter in the right corner. Can Kawhi do that? I'm not saying he can't. We just have not seen it as much as Luka. Luka's just really great at it. So the problem with trapping Luka is often it leads directly to a wide open 3-point shot. Now the difference with Kawhi, I think and really the Clippers offense in general, and the type of players that are on that team, is if you start trapping Kawhi Leonard, the likelihood of it getting to that left corner is more likely on a swing. So like maybe 2, maybe 3 players touch the ball in order to get it to that corner, assuming you're trapping Kawhi on the wing. So, that shooter might be open. And yeah, I think I agree with you. But the one thing I will say is, Go ahead.
No, you keep going.
The question I had is, can the Suns contain the Clippers from three? Because since Paul George's injury, and throughout the season, but since Paul George's injury in particular, the Clippers are shooting 42% from three as a team, which is the best in the league in that stretch. Now, it's a small stretch, but look, those players that are making those threes, those are the players that are playing in the playoffs. So there is some level of risk to saying we're going to trap Kawhi and we're going to let the ball swing around the perimeter. The problem with that in some respects, and I think the reason that I don't think the Suns will do this to start, I could be wrong, is that you're making those role players who can't do much else other than shoot, you're giving them the opportunity to be effective at the one thing they're good at.
Yeah.
Which is shooting.
I don't necessarily...
And I think there is some level of risk in that.
I agree that there is some level of risk. And I also agree, by the way, I don't think Monty's going to open up the series doing this. No way, because we've never seen him do it. I'm just saying what I would like to do. But I don't think there's necessarily as much of that risk if you play them in the right way. You mentioned the fact a lot of these... You don't want to lose a series on corner threes. That's like a shotgun blast to the chest. Like if you're losing a series because Robert Covington and Terrence Mann are hitting corner threes on you. But you also said that swing pass, it's going to be 2 or 3 decisions away from Kawhi.
Yeah.
2 or 3 guys in a row have to make the right decision. And I think this is very important. I have here, it's not a question, but it's a bullet point here at the top of my note sheet. It's in big, bold letters. It's the largest font I have on this entire sheet. And it just says... Let the Clippers be dumb. That's all it says. Let the Clippers be dumb. What I mean by that, and I think this is a point you've brought up in the past as well, the Clippers are not a team of 0.5 basketball decision-making savants. They're just not.
And they got a few.
They're just not. They've got some guys absolutely who can sit in the corner and hit threes. And you don't want the ball necessarily to fall into their hands every time. But mostly when I talk about I want to be aggressive on Kawhi, and Kawhi only. I'm talking about trapping Kawhi. I'm not talking about trapping anyone else. Because there are other guys. Russell Westbrook, if the ball winds up in Russell Westbrook's hands, and now suddenly he's like, if Russell Westbrook wants to go at you one-on-one, let him. Let him do whatever he wants all day. Don't bring help. Don't scramble. Don't let Russell Westbrook take whatever shots he wants in this series. Marcus Morris, again, I don't even know what type of role Marcus Morris is going to be playing. Marcus Morris wants to post you up from the high post, like for turnaround mid-range jumpers. Fucking let him. It doesn't matter. Like that's not, the math is not on LA's side if they let the ball stick in certain guys' hands. The offense needs to go through Kawhi. And if it's not going through Kawhi, then maybe it's in Westbrook's hands. But good offense means Westbrook is touching the paint and then kicking it out to the open shooters. Good offense is not if you just let Westbrook take pull-up jumpers. If you let Westbrook take pull-up jumpers, if you let Marcus Morris take mid-range jumpers, Norm Powell too to a certain extent, just like these other guys, you win the series. Because they're not going to win the possession battle, and those are garbage shots. It's bad offense. It's pretty simple.
Russ playing 30 minutes a game in LA is averaging 3.4 turnovers per game, which is really bad. really, really bad. And the turnover battle, I think, is going to be an interesting battle in that the Suns are probably going to take less threes. That's just what they do. And even if they take more, they're probably going to make less because of the 3-point discrepancy. But one thing to point out, too, with these teams is the Clippers are 24th in pace. And the Suns, not much better, 22nd in pace. But if the turnover battle starts to go in their favor, I think they got to push the ball at least every once in a while with live ball turnovers. You know, the Suns do a really good job of not turning it over for the most part. I think there's been some dumb turnovers as they get used to each other recently. Kevin Durant with 2.5 per game in the games that he's played in Phoenix, that's not normal. I think that can probably be cut down pretty dramatically as the playoffs go along. But yeah, if you start to force the ball out of Kawhi's hands and like you said, these guys start making mistakes, pushing the ball a little bit would be helpful. Will they do it? Probably not. We probably talked about the opportunity to do that in every single playoff preview, series preview that we've done so far. But it would be nice to see it because somebody like that. But what I will say is, if 4 out of the 5 starters are pretty good at like that 0.5 basketball, It's just Russ that's not. You know, Gordon, Leonard, Batum, Zubats, all of them pretty good at sort of that quick read.
Yeah, they're fine. Gordon's fine. Like Batum, if he catches in the corner and shoots,
Batum's
he's fine.
Good at it.
Yeah,
I mean, he can make that quick. You know,
I suppose he's not
assist.
turning the ball over. But you start to run into issues with Russ. You maybe run into issues with Bones. You maybe run into issues with Marcus Morris, Norm Powell. Just guys
Norm
who are
Powell for sure.
way too trigger happy. Like half the roster is way too trigger happy, and that's where I think you can start to exploit them a little bit.
Yeah, I'll say it again just to bring up the point from earlier. The playmakers on each team, the Suns have Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Cam Payne. And then the Clippers have Kawhi, and then you're talking about Russell Westbrook, Norm Powell, Eric Gordon, Bones, and Terrence Mann. These guys are not great assist guys. You know, Russ will get them, but at the rate that he gets assists, the turnovers are pretty close behind that pretty regularly. So it's just not a ton unless they get Paul George back. So, yeah, I think you're right, and I think it'll be an interesting chess match because the other thing is you don't trap for a whole game almost ever.
No.
You know, unless you're playing against Devin Booker. That's what teams tend to do. But when they throw it at him, when they try it, I think those types of things will be an interesting thing to watch because occasionally with Kevin Durant on the team, occasionally they did trap, even with DeAndre Ayton. So we'll see what they end up doing there. Let's see. That was your question, right? Is it my turn?
Yeah. How many do you have left? I have 2 left.
I have a few. Yeah, I have.
Don't tell me you have like 7 left.
No, I mean I always write a few extra just in case we
overlap.
It's
too
like
much,
40 minutes, or it's like 40 minutes left.
I'm very much
covered enough, but.
A different way. You ask me for 5, I give you exactly 5 and not 1% more. So,
will the Clippers play small?
Yeah,
that's the next question here, and I think the double part of this question is how good will Ayton be in this series, which is I think going to be the question, not just for every series but for every game. Because the importance of DeAndre Ayton is it's very high defensively. But if they go small, it's also going to be offensively. And throughout the series, it's going to be on the boards regardless of if they're big or they're small. But, we saw it previously. The Clippers went small. DeAndre Ayton played well against the Clippers. I think he was really important in that series. And, of course, we all remember the Valley-oop and how important that play was. But if they go small, the options they had before was Ayton. The option they have now is KD. And I think that's just a little different as far as whether or not they keep Ayton on the floor or not. Because, if you go Kevin Durant at center when the Clippers play small, it's just different. That means DeAndre Ayton's off the floor. And I don't know if that's good or bad for the Suns. I think it might be dependent on how the game's going or when they do it. Like if they do it at the end of the fourth quarter, I have a feeling DeAndre Ayton will be in. Mm-hmm. If they do it to start the third quarter, or halfway through the third quarter, at that point you might go with Kevin Durant at center for a while there.
I think it's really great for the Suns that they can just play Kevin Durant at center if they choose to. I mean, it's like
so great. Yeah.
It's the ultimate trump card. Because
it does put a lot of pressure on Monty, though.
Sure. But we're talking about something that has been this LA team's identity. Like, it was a big deal for them to go out and acquire Mason Plumlee and kind of go away from the small ball 5 identity that they had embraced in the past. Because now, yeah, you could still do it. Like, okay, you want to fucking get Robert Covington some run and play him at the 5? Okay, that's cute. Here's Kevin Durant, and we're going to rain mid-range jumpers on you and destroy you possession by possession. Like, it's just I don't know. It's like they have some nice role players that they can stick out 4 or 5, and maybe you could even argue like that's the ideal way that the Clippers should embrace more of those minutes, and it's the ideal way for them to guard Kevin Durant. They just start switching everything. But the Suns are just I think the Suns win that battle because at the end of the day they just have more talent offensively. I don't think it necessarily goes in the Clippers' favor at all.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I don't
good.
think they've really done it.
Feel good.
I don't think they've done it as much this season in general.
They haven't, but you're hand wringing a little bit too much
because
for me. You're not feeling good enough about this for me. You have Kevin Durant on your team, Mike. You have Kevin Durant on your team. Be happy.
Well, I'll say this. Actually, that's an interesting point because how confident are you in the Suns in general just going into the playoffs? You seem like you feel pretty great.
They need to win a championship in order for this experiment to have worked. So like I don't think that like I feel good about that in the sense that they're one of the favorites, but I also know that several other teams could win the championship this year. So that's hard. But just to get out of the first round against the Clippers, I feel fucking great. I don't know. Like, do you not? Do you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so where's this doubt coming from right now? Let's psychoanalyze you a little bit because I know.
Yeah, no. I'm prepared to talk about that.
Beyond the question of health, which I think we can just cast aside because obviously,
yeah, that's just it. That is what it is. That is what it is. That's always a question.
Yeah, the entire playoff run.
It's always a question every playoff series, every playoff game, regardless of how you feel about the rest of the nitty-gritty and the details. Health is always the biggest question. But the Suns have Kevin Durant. They've won every single game Kevin Durant has played, and I still think it has not looked as good as it should have.
Well, that's just true.
I think
it's just true.
It's just true, yeah. And I think if it had, I would feel more confident. And it's not necessarily like I'm worried about this series. I think the Suns should be heavily favored in this series. I don't make predictions. Things always happen you don't expect. I don't like to do that prediction thing. I just think it makes the games less fun in general.
That's his way of saying Clippers and folks.
But I think there is a version of me going into this playoffs where my confidence in the team is soaring. And it's not. I think the Suns are, if I had to just guess based on what I've seen, I think the Suns are beatable in the playoffs. I don't think it's a guarantee that they make the finals. Having said that, I am not confident in any Western Conference team. They're all beatable. I think every single one is. And when every team is beatable and you're the only team that has Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, you should feel the most confident. And I think I feel the most confident out of all of those teams. It's just such a weird year where the Suns have a gear to hit that they have not hit. And I would have liked to see them hit that gear in the regular season before going into the playoffs. Now they're going to be trying to hit that gear in the playoffs where the games matter more than any other time. And they could, and they probably will at times in the postseason. And I hope, it starts pretty quickly here in the first round, because if they make it out of the first round, which I think they will, it starts to get tougher and tougher as the series go, of course. Look, I am confident, but I do think that the Suns have not made me in the way that they've played, and just because of the lack of games that they've had together, there's a version of me feeling differently, a lot more confident in the playoff or going into the playoffs is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think you qualified it.
Okay,
in the
what
right
do you got?
way.
What's your next?
Sure,
big
number
question?
4. Is this a Chris Paul series? Do you have anything on Chris Paul?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'm glad we're
thoughts.
Glad we're talking about
it.
Yeah. You better. I'm glad we're talking about it a little bit. Some people mentioned the fact Chris Paul played well to close the season. Not in the sense that he had, all of a sudden 25, 30-point games. I think he had maybe one, but his last game of the season. But his last 10 games, he averaged 15.6 points. He shot 46% from the field and 45% from deep. He was good. He's riding some momentum into the playoffs, and he was good enough to the point at which I think people were asking us online. They were like, is Chris Paul, has he just been saving it for the playoffs this whole time? Like, is that what's happening? He's just saving his energy. He's conserving it. I think it's dramatic to say that because I do believe Chris Paul always gives it his all. However, I do think there is something to the fact that Chris Paul has positive momentum going for him right now, and the conditions behind this specific series could be conducive to a good Chris Paul series, and I would hope to see it. Chris Paul was asked recently, or he just talked about to reporters, the fact that point guards actually guard him again. For a while it was like other players would hide on Chris Paul essentially, the opposite, that Chris Paul was one of the tougher assignments on the team to take, and so that the best defenders were guarding Booker, and then they were guarding Chris Paul as the second guy. Well, now Chris Paul is the third, arguably even fourth guy, but the third perimeter creator on this team. So the best defenders are going to Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, obviously. Who guards Chris Paul in this series? It's going to be Russell Westbrook. Because who else could Russell Westbrook possibly guard? He's not going to guard Devin Booker.
Yeah. Well, they could hide him on, I guess, Okogie, but...
And then what? Did you
Gordon? It's just really
I
they don't have the
suppose-
guys to guard this team, man. We keep talking about it.
I suppose they could do that, but I'm operating under the assumption that I think Russell Westbrook is going to guard Chris Paul. And I think that is a great matchup for Chris Paul. Not so much in terms of he's not going to beat him with his speed or athleticism, but you work Russell Westbrook in actions. Go to your double drag, go to your elbow series, go to like whatever, Spain, all of the stuff that we know that they run, but work Russell Westbrook into multiple actions and specifically pick on his screen navigation. And that's where Chris Paul is going to start finding space. And I think if he has his shot going based on his final stretch to end the season and he can continue that momentum, I think the shots will be there for Chris Paul. Like, yes, KD will get his, Booker will get his, but I think Chris Paul could have a good series. I feel pretty good about that right now.
It's one thing to say, the thing about the Suns with their current iteration of the team is if Chris Paul has it, like his shot's there, there's no guarding them. There's nothing you can do. So if he has it, you're dead. You're just dead. I don't think any team could beat them if all three and plus DeAndre in at the rim just have it. There's nothing you can do. The likelihood of defensive players leaving Chris Paul now is high. It's pretty high because he's the guy passing it to one of the guys that gets double teamed. And they're not going to leave Devin Booker. They're not going to leave Kevin Durant if they can avoid it. So leaving, even in the mid-range, off the dribble, there's a chance that they just leave him there. And, that means he's got to hit it. The theory from Kellen Olson when we talked about this was Chris Paul has gas left in the tank, but then when he uses it, that's it. You can't fill it back up. You can't fill it back up. That there's gas in the tank, but there's no refilling it. And I believe that too. I think he does have it. I think there is some level of saving himself for the playoffs, and I think he understands the importance of this particular playoffs as his best opportunity to win a title more than any other time, including the Houston years, which I think you could have made the case that the Houston years were the best chance until the Suns made the finals. Obviously, that was the best opportunity. Once you're there, you're there. But he was out of it. He was out of it in the finals. He was out of it in the Mavs series, and he's not going to be out of it in this Clippers series. I think it's there. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really important series for him. And I think, like I said, if he can hit shots, there's nothing you can do.
There's
nothing you can do.
I'm really rooting hard on the redemption arc, man, because this fan base has picked on Chris Paul a little bit this season. I would like to see the redemption. I'd like to see a game or two in this series where it's really him coming through, making those shots, and kind of persevering in the big moments.
I got two quick ones. You have was that your last one?
I have one last one, but it's also a quick one. It's more like
okay.
Fun. I'm going to make you make a prediction.
Okay, then let me just do mine, and then I'll let you do that one last because mine aren't that fun. Who plays backup center? I think this is just
a
quick one. Is it going to be Jock or is
I got
it
Wainwright?
I think it's going to be Biz. I think it's going to be Biz, right? At least to start the series.
Dude, I don't know. I would have had to go back into like their game.
They
logs.
play a big. They play Plumlee.
Yeah,
they don't really. They used to play Zubats and then that's it.
Yeah.
Not play any other bigs. Just play small and every other. They don't do that anymore.
Yep.
So the Suns need a big, and he's good. He's a good backup center.
Plumlee,
Plumlee.
He is. He's and the fun thing too about Zubats and Plumlee, like they get no drop off in rebounding from one guy to the next. Both of those guys, you look at their numbers, it's like 13 rebounds per 36 for both of them. They're two strong ass dudes. So the Suns might want to match that with Biz, but I think either guy's capable.
Yeah, Plumlee kind of Jock matched up against Plumlee at some point in the season. Plumlee kind of had his way with Jock a little bit, but I think Jock's capable. I think offensively, we know the difference, and I think it's going to be Biz. I'm interested to see if that holds for the entire series, and I guess we'll see. Maybe it's just like the regular season where they're just going to switch off every 2 games, one to the other as it goes. But that's all I got that one. The other question I have is, will the Clippers go to the zone defense a lot? We've talked a lot about how they don't really have the guys to match up one-on-one against the Suns, and the Suns have good options for the zone in that they have guys who could potentially isolate and guys who can shoot in the star players. But I do think that there is some level of teams kind of have to play together against a zone defense to play well, and they haven't had a lot of time against zone defenses. And I think the Clippers are willing. The Clippers are willing to play zones. I looked it up. I haven't watched enough to know about it, so I tried to look up some instances of Clippers reporters talking about their zone defense, and it seems like they spent quite a bit of time. And look, they got Ty Lue. This guy's like some sort of scientist back there doing crazy stuff, coaching wise, and they're going to try everything they can. Yeah, and I think the zone defense could play a factor in this series.
Do you know which zone? But off the top of your head, I wouldn't necessarily.
No, I don't. I didn't see any film. If anyone can find film, I would love to watch it, but I couldn't find any clips of it. I just saw instances of people talking about it.
Yeah, it's just hard because I get what you're saying. The Suns definitely haven't had that level of cohesion. Knowing Ty Lue, I would expect him to throw it out there at some point. I just don't know what version of the zone, if Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Chris Paul are on the floor at once, what version of the zone can you deploy where they don't find the gaps? I'm not really sure. Now, if you want to get a little bit more inventive and kind of muck up their space in the minutes where it's just Booker or it's just KD and otherwise kind of like bench guys, that might be a little bit more interesting. Maybe you could box and one them in some situations. But I don't know. It's not going to be a go-to strategy for them in any case. It probably will be something.
I could see the box and one like when Durant and Booker are not on the floor together.
That's exactly what I mean. Like KD will come off the floor and then it'll be Booker and 4 bench guys who Ty Lue doesn't really care about, all due respect to them, but Campaign or Landry Shamet or whoever it is. And so he'll say, okay, let's box and one Booker for 3 or 4 minutes and see what happens. Yeah, I could see that happening. For sure.
Yeah. We'll see what ends up happening there. Just wanted to give it a shout out because I think there's a chance that we hear the word zone on the broadcast quite a bit going forward. So we'll see what ends up happening there. That's all I got. Obviously we'll have more after every single game to talk about adjustments and all that. But what do you got for your last one?
I got one more. I want to force you to make a prediction. Okay. And don't worry, it's not the series prediction because I know you don't do those. But when I think about the greatest Suns performances in the playoffs that I've personally seen in my life, one of them that instantly stands out, maybe his best playoff game ever, although I think it's debatable because there were some great ones in the finals as well. Devin Booker 2 years ago in the Western Conference Finals, Game 1 against the Clippers, he had 40 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists. Tore them to shreds. You remember this game, obviously.
Yeah. Without a doubt, I think his best game, in my opinion.
You think it's better than the back-to-back 40 points? Those are tough because they were losses.
Well, I think the circumstances of the game in that Chris Paul was all of a sudden not playing mattered.
He also had
that's crazy.
He also had 47 against the Lakers in round 1 of that same year. So that's that stands out as well. Yeah. But I think 40, 30, and 11 probably, or did I say 30? 40, 13, and 11 is probably his best playoff game.
It's crazy.
Now I'm going to challenge you between anyone on the Suns, but realistically, the only guys who could top this would be Booker or Kevin Durant. I'd love to see Josh Okogie try and score 41 points. I don't think it's going to happen. But do you think there could be any individual performance in this series that outdoes that between either of those guys?
I think we are about to see an absolutely insane playoff performance from Devin Booker. And not just, in one game. I'm not going to call it out one game. We're about to see Devin Booker in the playoffs against the second best defender on every team. We have not yet seen that. And I think he's going to be insane. I think there's a reason his numbers were so juiced in the games that Kevin Durant played with him. The way the looks he was getting, the shots he was getting, they're just going to be so much better. And if anyone does it, I think it's going to be Devin Booker, because I think their defenses are just going to really panic with KD, and KD's going to be willing to move that ball.
This is very much not a scientific thing, so don't hold me to this, but it just feels like defenses are going to be panicking about KD. They're going to be throwing doubles at KD, and none of it's going to matter. He's going to get to his 25, 26, 27 points every single night regardless on solid efficiency, no matter what defense you throw at him. Meanwhile, there's Booker, and I think there are going to be some nights where he has 15 points and is very much a second option, and other nights where I could see a 40 to 50-point explosion, honestly. Exactly. I think if there's any guy who has that potential, it's Book.
I'm excited. We got game 1 Sunday at 5 p.m. Arizona time. And our plan is to record after that one. And also, if you'd like to join us on Saturday morning, we're going to be watching the Game 1 of the Nets Sixers series on playback just to watch Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges show a little support. I think a lot of Suns fans will be watching that game. We figured might as well be with us. So check out that game. We won't be doing Game 1 of the Suns series on playback. If we do a game in the first round, we will let you know.
We probably will. We probably will. It's just not going to be an every game thing, obviously, because of scheduling conflicts. And also, I just don't think it would be that fun to do every game on playback. I think it should be more of a special occasion. But we will do some Suns games on playback this playoff run at some point. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, hopefully you join us for the Nets game Saturday morning.
Yep. Very excited for this round 1. It's one of the best times of the year. You just turn on your TV on the weekend, and there's games on all day long. It's one of the best.
And not only that,
so
but
we're excited to cover it.
They actually matter. They are games that matter.
Exactly.
No load management, people. No fake injuries. These games all matter.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this preview. We will be back to you after every game with our expected adjustments as the series goes on. Enjoy the playoffs, and we'll be back soon.